I would like to call to order the November 19th Lake Washington School Board meeting. I will now entertain a motion to approve the November 19th agenda.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Carlson and seconded by Director La Liberty that we approve the agenda. All those in favor, please signify by voting aye.
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 All those opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Okay, our next step is public comments. On a monthly basis, the Board of Directors provides an opportunity for public comment during our board meetings. And do we have people currently signed up? Excellent. So this is a time where the board gets to hear from the public. There are multiple avenues in addition to public comment for the community to talk to us. They can email, you can call, or letters. And please note that public comment is not a question-answer session with the board. The board and superintendent will not respond to communities during public comment, as our goal is to listen and to learn from you. However, we might ask that you follow up with staff if there are additional questions or things that need to occur. Typically, we allow up to 30 minutes on the agenda for public comment, and if a number of people are signed up to speak on the same topic, which it appears we have, several people speaking on ASL 3, you have 3 minutes in which to speak on the topic, and if you could do the favor of adding to the person speaking before you and not saying the same thing again, that would be greatly appreciated. When your name is called, please approach the podium, speak into the microphone, giving your full name and school attendance area for the record. There's a stoplight system right behind Director Sage there, and that will show a yellow light when you have 1 minute left and a red signifying that the 3 minutes are up. And it is important for all community members here to feel safe and welcome during our board's business meeting. We do not take public comments on issues related to personnel or individually named staff at board meetings. Audience members are expected to treat all attendees with respect and civility. So with that, I would like to ask Rachel East to please come forward to the center microphone and give us your name and school attendance area for the record.
Okay. Hi, my name is Rachel East, and I'm a sophomore at Lake Washington High School. One thing I love about my school is the American Sign Language program. I am currently enrolled in ASL 2, and last year I was on the Lake Washington High School ASL competition team. We ended up coming 4th in state, which was pretty exciting, and I'm also the president of ASL Club. So I really like ASL. So last year, ASL 3 was taken away from our course catalog. Well, not our course catalog. It was taken away. It just wasn't run. We had people sign up, but it wasn't run. And as a student, this makes me feel unprepared for college and at a disadvantage compared to my peers. Students enrolled in French and Spanish have the opportunity to take classes all the way up to French 4 and Spanish 4, and ASL students don't even have the opportunity to take ASL 3. So I decided to reach out to my principal to get further clarification about the situation. And from that, I learned a little bit about the process of running a course at Lake Washington High School. I know that 32 students must sign up, and last year we did reach the minimum, but we were unable to locate another teacher who was willing to teach just the one class. So this year, Lake Washington High School's ASL teacher has a full schedule of ASL 1 and 2. And so essentially, our ASL 3 class was traded in for an ASL 1 class. And next year, our program is only going to grow. In a recent survey of 117 students conducted by Sam Wu, 92% reported that they would want to take ASL 3 after completing ASL 1 and 2. That means that next year, nearly all ASL 2 students would enroll in ASL 3 if it was available, and also out of those students who could not take ASL 3 this year, many of them are currently in 11th grade, meaning that they could still take ASL 3 next year if it returned. These groups of students could most likely make up 2 classes of ASL 3 altogether, and I am uninformed about the situation at Redmond High School, but I know they're also missing ASL 3, so I'm sure there would be enough students for at least one ASL 3 class. Bringing in a new ASL teacher needs to be a district priority. You guys can learn more about the numbers and statistics than I can with ease, but our problem is really urgent. My school isn't giving me the enrichment that I crave or the opportunity to impress colleges with my transcript. The main suggestion that I've heard is to take an ASL 3 class at Bellevue College through the Running Start program, and this process would be complicated and very confusing. I believe that students shouldn't have to leave the Lake Washington High School campus to feel college ready. All we're getting right now is the bare minimum. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Is it possible that we could get a copy of your comments? Or we can make a
Yeah.
Is that okay?
It's fine. You can give us, just hand it off to Diane, and it'll get to all of us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, Sam Wu.
Hello, board members. I'm Sam Wu, a senior from Lake Washington High School, and today we're not here to complain about why or how our school doesn't have ASL 3. Instead, we're here to present a problem and a solution to the problem. Now, let's talk a little bit about me first. I started taking ASL my sophomore year of high school, and I was a part of the ASL team for our district first and second year, which got us second and fourth place in state competition. Starting my freshman year, I've been talking to my counselors about which classes I should take, which courses I should take, and to pursue my final career, which is nursing. And I've been told several times by my counselor that I should take 3 consecutive years of the same language to be a competitive applicant. However, I wasn't able to have that opportunity because this year our ASL 3 class was cut. And me as a senior won't be able to take it next year because I'm probably going to graduate.
That would be good.
Hopefully. So the reason behind this was because our principal told us that Miss Lane, our ASL teacher, has a full schedule and they could not squish another class into her schedule. I did a survey, and according to my survey of 117 students, when asked, knowing that both Spanish and French offers 1, 2, 3, and 4, do you think that schools should also offer students a chance to take ASL 3? 97% of the students said yes, and 100% of the teachers and admin says yes. In the same survey, I also asked, have you heard of counselors and other educators telling that you should take 3 years of the same language so that when colleges and universities look at your application, you're more competitive? The results were the same. 97% of the students said yes, and 100% of the admin said yes. This all concludes that we need to hire an ASL teacher for our school. However, according to my research, I did not find any job posting of an ASL teacher in our district website. This leads me to think that maybe our district doesn't want students taking ASL to be competitive when it comes to applying for colleges, and I'm sure that our district doesn't want students to think that they don't care about the students. So I hope our district can take action upon this issue. Rather, it's hiring another ASL teacher or cutting ASL 1 class size or making ASL 1 a only sophomore or sophomore and freshman class. Either of these solutions would work, but we have to do something about this. Thank you.
Thank you.
That would be great. Thank you. And so the next individual we have signed up is Aisha. And I'm going to let you pronounce your last name because I'm not 100% correct.
Ujoa.
Ujoa. I would not have got it.
It's kind of a tricky one.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah, thank you. I'm Aisha Ujoa, a junior at Lake Washington High School. I took ASL my freshman year and then decided to take a year of Spanish to improve my grammar, with the hope of later taking ASL 2 and 3 as a junior and senior. I asked my counselor about this decision and was reassured that I would be able to gain my consecutive language credits through ASL this way. But after taking away ASL 3, I am no longer able to gain those credits through ASL. Now as a junior, I've become part of our school's diversity action and inclusion team. And after joining the team, I no longer see the loss of ASL 3 as just a loss of credits, but a loss of allowing LW students to fully communicate with the deaf community in and out of school. At LW, we have students who only communicate through sign language, and having all 3 years of ASL is allowing LW students to communicate and include those students in everyday life and make them feel like they belong in our school and in our district. Not only in our school, but outside of school as well. I work at a retirement home where a lot of people in our Corwin Center at Emerald Heights, right up the street, use ASL, as well as work in the nursery at my local church, where I have been able to help a huge group of people who only use ASL and sign language to better understand where they're supposed to be and help them communicate with their kids and bridge that gap. But I'm no longer able to continue my learning through ASL by taking a full 3 years, which has really impacted my ability to help people in the community and just stay involved, which is something that I love to do. And I think by adding back ASL 3, it would really help bridge the gap between the deaf community, which isn't getting that much publicity, as well as students in our school. I'm also a Spanish native speaker, and I know that when I was learning English, it was very difficult to be able to communicate with people at my school and just around my community who didn't speak Spanish. But as they said before, the Spanish and French programs at our school offer up to AP Spanish, and people are able to communicate with students who only speak Spanish at our school. And I know, like, in my chemistry class, there is one student who just moved from Spain, and he sits at a table group with students who are taking Spanish or who already know Spanish, because it's the way that he's able to learn. And I know that people who speak only or who use only sign language at our school would like that opportunity as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And our fourth person who has signed up is Cole Bailey.
Hi, I'm Cole Bailey, a junior at LDub as well, and I'm here to talk about how LDub can help the ASL community by bringing back ASL 3. ASL as a culture and language is struggling, and people in our own school don't even know what ASL is. ASL is a language, and though relatively new, a language nonetheless. And like all other languages, it has a rich history and culture behind it. If French 4 or Spanish 3 were removed, there would be an uproar from their respective communities. So why hasn't there been one from the deaf community? It is because we cannot understand them. This school, as a place of inclusion and diversity, has the responsibility to accept ASL into its home and respect the culture by teaching the future leaders of the world a language that doesn't just build bridges between comprehensions or verb tenses, but between the people that have a hard time voicing their opinions. This school needs to bring back ASL 3 to respect the community and prove that they are a place of inclusion that they pride themselves on. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Your speech as well, that would be fabulous if we could have your comments. Thank you. And that is everyone that we have signed up this evening. And I have a feeling we might break from protocol for just a second, because I can see some interest in which to have just a few comments. So I will go ahead and let Director Carlson, because I can see he'd like to speak.
Well, typically we won't, it's not a back and forth time, but students are special. And I wanted to ask you guys a quick yes/no question. For those of you who, as a senior, obviously you don't have an issue here, but if you were able to take 4 years of ASL, would you? Okay, thank you.
Okay, and Dr. Staven would like to also ask a question.
I'd like to know which of you is willing to go and get certified to come back and teach American Sign Language at Lake Washington High School in about 4 or 5 years. Okay, that's good. That's one of the hardest things, is to find the right teachers for it. And so I appreciate your comments tonight. I think it's really great that it's offered at all. There's a shortage nationwide of quality interpreters that are highly skilled and highly certified. And so we will certainly take your comments into account, but good for you for being in it. Good job.
I would just like to say thank you very much for coming out and sharing your story. As we put in new languages, that is one of the challenges then, is to build that through. So when I got on the board in 2011 is when we first started doing ASL shortly thereafter with again, a community coming forward and speaking to it. So I appreciate your taking the time, your thoughtfulness with your comments, and your enthusiasm is fabulous to see and is exciting. My daughter does ASL as well and absolutely loves it. It's a fabulous language. So appreciate your taking the time and coming forward, and we will continue to look into that to see. to reach our goals of equity and policy is definitely there, and you spoke to that very well. So thank you very much for taking that time, and we will be in touch.
And yes, you can go home and do homework at this point. You don't have to, we won't be offended.
But again, thanks so much for coming out and speaking to us directly. That was greatly appreciated. And the next item on our agenda is the consent agenda. So I will now entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved by Director Sage and seconded by Director La Liberty to approve the consent agenda. Dr. Statham, will you pull the board?
Yes, Siri.
Yes.
Mark.
Yes.
Chris.
Yes.
Eric.
Yes.
Cassandra.
Yes.
Mix it up a little.
Thanks for mixing it up a little bit and going the other direction, which sort of surprised some of us. On that, we do have the donations that are provided by our community. So Dr. Staven will go ahead and present sort of a summary of the financial support that our students receive.
Our donations fall really into three large categories. And so as a summary of those donations, we first want to thank the Lake Washington Schools Foundation for a donation in the amount of $5,476.91. Our PTSA, who supports our schools in so many different ways, the amount from that organization is $69,549.62. And then from our private donors and a variety of people in the district who give in a number of different ways to support our school district as individuals or even businesses. That's an amount of $64,443.23, and we certainly want to express our appreciation to all of those organizations and individuals.
Thank you, and as always, we will be sending out a letter of thank you with that of the donation, so thank you very much for that support. So our next item is onto the non-consent agenda, and the first one is the 2019 Capital Projects Levy. This will be the first reading of Resolution 2259. So Dr. Statham?
Yes, and as Barbara comes up, I would just like to thank the board for the work that you have done collectively as we've tried to put things together in preparation for a levy that Barbara will present the details on tonight. We know that in our school district, we have really great challenges and challenges that many school districts would love to have, but we are a fast-growing district, and it is incumbent upon all of us to make sure that our students have adequate learning spaces and have places that allow for great programs, and that we have ongoing needs, both in terms of facilities that are no longer large enough to accommodate some of the growth despite things with boundaries and program moves that we still have ongoing needs, as well as our aging facilities. And then we all know that many of our schools also have additional bonus classrooms, which we refer to as portables. Those are structures that were not meant to be permanent structures, but nevertheless are housing our students. And so really, as we look at our funding mechanisms moving forward, it's how do we continue to address growth? How do we continue to address our aging facilities? How do we continue to go back and remedy those areas that have portables in terms of adding permanent space? And then how do we also look to our community to help us find alternative learning spaces, existing structures, or embedded programs that we might begin considering, or new ways of envisioning our schools? And so as we move forward, levies are one mechanism that we have used in the past and are going to continue to advocate for, as well as any other funding streams that are available to us per state requirements and per allowable things that we have to access as a school district in order to fund great facilities for our students. So that being said, Barbara, you can certainly have the floor with your presentation.
Great, thank you very much. So I am going to start with our, just a look back at funding construction in the Lake Washington School District. So in the near recent past, after our long-term facility task force made a long-term funding recommendation for future bonds, before that bond could be put on the ballot in 2015, we implemented a short-term space plan, and we added 30 portables and an addition at Redmond Elementary, and also added teacher planning spaces and did a full reboundary across the district in our elementary schools. So that happened in 2015, and then in 2016, we passed the first of 4 bond measures to implement our long-term facility task force recommendations, and those recommendations went through 2930 to provide additional capacity for not only our past growth, but for the future expected growth. And then in 2017, we redrew new boundaries and developed another short-term space plan to deal with critical capacity needs. And in 2018, as part of the long-term plan, we put a bond measure on the February 2018 ballot. That bond received about 54% approval. Though it did not pass, it needed 60% approval in order to pass. So that bond would have provided, you'll see the second column over the February 2018 bond, would have provided for the following projects: addition at Lake Washington High School, new space in the Lake Washington learning community, some rebuilding and enlarging of schools, and a new choice high school in Sammamish. Again, that would have added space for 2,100 students if that had passed. And you'll see the recommendations that we're making recommendations follow this original bond plan, the original critical projects. So just a little bit about our district. We cover 76 square miles. We have 54 schools right now. Next year we'll have 55 with the opening of our new middle school. We cover 3 cities, Kirkland, Redmond, Sammamish, but parts of unincorporated King County and a small part of Bellevue. We are the 3rd largest district in Washington State. So our October 1 enrollment, which is our official enrollment that we report to the state, was 29,987 students. And I believe our November, we reached our 30,000 mark in November enrollment count. Our enrollment has increased 26% since 2008. This is really unprecedented enrollment growth for any district. So that just shows the trajectory. And so just some details. We've had 11 straight years of enrollment increases. We've increased in the last 10 years an average of 620 students per year, and that's the size of a large elementary school per year. So this chart shows our current capacity versus enrollment. We use the term permanent capacity. Those are our physical buildings, as opposed to portables, which are portable capacity. So our permanent capacity is shown by the dark gray bar, and it is increasing in the 1920 and 2021 school years because we are opening a middle school in fall of 19, and we will have Juanita High School open the next year. So that's just why the permanent capacity space is increasing in those years. But what's telling from this chart, and the green bar is our current enrollment in 18-19, and then projected enrollment going forward. And so what's telling about this chart is that we have a gap right now between our permanent capacity and our actual enrollment and projected enrollment. So that's shown in the light gray area. Our gap shows right there. So we definitely have a need for additional permanent space. And again, this is our need K-12. We have just opened new buildings in the Redmond learning community. We have other learning communities that have additional space needs that need to be addressed. So this is just a summary of our portables. We have 181 portables in our district. This accounts for 14% of our classrooms, and it equals 6 large elementary schools, and houses 4,000 students. So the next few slides are slides we show we had in our program report at the last board meeting, and so I'll go over those again with some more detail. So this shows our capacity need. While the prior slide was K-12 capacity and enrollment projection, this shows our capacity need by each level and each learning community. So right now we have a capacity need, and the blue bar is our permanent space. The blue part of the bar is permanent. The lighter red or pink area is the portable space that is being provided. And then the red dark part of the bar is the need, and the unhoused need. So right now in the Juanita Learning Community, we have approximately 250 students that will not have space based on our projections through the year 21-22. And in the Lake Washington Learning Community, we have approximately 500 students that will not have space. And in the East Lake community, about 50 students will not have space in the short term, and 200 students will not have space in the long term. So at the middle school level, we have about 225 middle school students that will not have space at Kirkland and Rose Hill Middle Schools in the Lake Washington Learning Community. And at our high schools, we have a capacity need at Lake Washington High School. And let me just go back. You'll see the tiny red bar at Redmond High School, but it's small enough that a school of that size can handle that little bit of capacity need. So at Lake Washington High School, we have approximately 350 students that will not have space. Right now we have 10 portables at the Lake Washington High School campus, and those portables will need to move to the middle school to provide the needed space there. So once those portables are moved, we will have unhoused capacity at Lake Washington High School. So sorry, I skipped that slide. So things that we have done to develop our levy recommendation and plan. So we have had 6 board study sessions since March through November. And during those study sessions, we looked at and we reviewed our enrollment projections and our capacity need. We discussed our past actions and strategies. We provided options on potential projects, critical projects, and answered board questions. And we also reviewed our short-term and long-term engagement plan, and we reviewed our election timing options and financial strategies. We also convened our levy advisory committee. This is a committee that is comprised of both community members, staff members, PTA representatives, and we met twice with that committee to provide feedback on our recommendations. So our recommendations for our critical capacity needs. We have 3 areas, 3 types of projects that are part of the recommendation. We have critical projects for growth, we have core facilities, and we have critical projects for safety. So first I'll talk about the critical projects for growth. We are recommending to build 44 classrooms at 5 schools. Those schools would be Lake Washington High School, Twain Elementary, Franklin Elementary, Rose Hill Elementary, and Carson Elementary. Those classrooms would house 1,052 students. The second part of our recommendation is core facilities. When you expand a school, it is important that you also look at the core facilities, and the definition of core facilities is the gymnasium space, the commons or cafeteria space, the large gathering spaces for students. So we're going to be looking at core facilities, expanding core facilities at those 5 schools where we're putting additions. And as I mentioned, that's commons, cafeteria space, and our auxiliary and gym space. And then the third category is critical projects for safety. So we are the recommendation is to add exterior cameras at our 29 elementary schools. And then also would provide remodeled front entries at our 3 high schools, 3 comprehensive high schools, Redmond High School, Eastlake High School, and Lake Washington High School. Juanita High School is being rebuilt and enlarged right now, and their entryway will have the secure entryway. And then our Choice High School, STEM and ICS also have the secured entryway. And so these 3 high schools would need to have some remodeling done in order to provide for the entry control systems implementation. So how these projects would be funded is through a 2019 capital levy. And so the district has received funding and reserved those fundings for critical needs, and we have currently $24 million, which represents the remaining balance of our 2006 bonds and state construction assistance funds. And the total project costs are $144 million, and so less the $24 million, we're recommending a levy of $120 million, and that would be a 6-year capital projects levy, or $20 million a year over 6 years. And this is another chart showing our tax rate per thousand, our funding plan. And the key part of this chart is to show that we are maintaining our tax rate. So the 2018 tax rate is $3.03, and it's made up of 3 categories. We have our EP&O rate, which is the blue bar. We have our capital projects and facilities and technology levy, which is the darker brown bar. You can see 57 cents in that first column. And then we have our bonds at $1.26, which is the lighter brown bar. So in 2019, the tax rate was, when we went out to the voters for the 2018 levies and bonds, the tax rate was expected to decrease due to our reduction in our EPO levy. Due to the increase in state funds through McCleary. And I just want to make sure that the McCleary funds are only to be used for operations, and they can't be used for capital projects or capital construction or the technology. So those, the McCleary funds fund operations and cannot fund construction. So the tax rate was expected to go down, and will be going down in 2019. This shows a steeper drop due to increases in assessed valuation. We're using our estimated assessed valuation in 2019. We won't have the actual assessed valuation until January, February timeframe, so this is still an estimate. But as a reminder, the district can only collect what the voters authorize. If the assessed valuation increases, we collect the same dollar amount. So we only collect a flat dollar amount, not a rate per thousand. So moving past, so this levy would be voted on in 2019 and would affect taxes in 2020. So the column of that shows 2020, you can see that we will be, our bonds will be decreasing, the top brown bar, and the levy is being that gray area of 29 cents, 28 cents, 27 cents through 25 cents. Those two combined, we're maintaining the current rate, construction rate of $1.16. Okay, and this assumes that we have a future bond. This also assumes a future planned bond in 22 and renewal of our EP&O and capital projects levy, which we are required to do every 4 years. Okay. And this chart shows kind of our long-term plan. So this levy really is to get us through for some critical project needs before we can come and the growth still is there, and we still have space needs. And so in 2019, we will have a levy, and that levy will fund those critical capacity needs that I already talked about. And then also in 2019, we're going to use those district funds to provide portable classes in the Juanita learning community and move those portables from Lake Washington High School to Rose Hill and Kirkland Middle School. And that will be done through the 1921 timeframe. And then we'll begin, we had said with the long-term planning task force that we would have the 2016 bond, the 2018 bond, and then we'd bring the task force back together before running the next two bonds. So we will bring that task force back together in 2020, and we'll reconvene them to determine future, to confirm was our original plan still the plans, or reconfirm our project needs and our funding strategy. And then we will also look at our ed specs, which is the kind of the blueprint for how you design, or the square footage that you need to design a school. And so we'll look at those ed specs to determine, do we need to look, do some, look more plan for urban schools, such as a school, in a, downtown urban center versus one in a neighborhood elementary school. So what does the educational specification need to look like for a school, that type of school? And then there's the potential for a future funding measure to be determined for 2022. So this levy recommendation is, so we're, as I've said, we're planning for a 6-year capital levy to accomplish these critical projects. This is really a bridge to get us to the longer term need. The growth needs that we have are not going to stop. We are still going to be looking towards other resources even after this levy is approved. And so this is just kind of the short-term strategy, and our longer-term strategy is coming back with a bond. So, as part of our original plan. So that is the end of my presentation. Do you have any questions or anything to add?
Thank you. I will first field questions. Comments?
Since we spent the study section on this, we don't have a whole lot of comments, but certainly in terms of emphasis, there are so many pieces of this that are so important for our district that I appreciate the fact that this is just the on-ramp, so to speak, to the real bridge, but it's an on-ramp we need, and we need it yesterday. So I think this is the best solution available. It's still, it's a splint. We're damaged right now. This is not something where we want to be having to do this.
Director Sage?
I just wanted to, for pointing out that the funding from McCleary does not allow us to use those dollars to build schools or for construction for capital projects. I think that can get confusing sometimes, so thank you for pointing that out.
Do you have any comments?
I can comment if you want to count it as my superintendent report. How about that? We
Sure.
combine things. Yeah. As somebody new to the district, looking at the incredible growth that has been here, like I said before, that is a great challenge that many, many places would love to have. There are shrinking school districts, which equals shrinking funds, which equals shrinking programs, and less things for kids. And so as we look at the importance of this levy, it's not the only piece of the puzzle, and as Director Carlson said, it's a short-term step that's been part of a progression leading up to this. We have great projects that are going on right now as a result of bonds that have been passed, levies that have been passed, but we have to continue to look at those needs as they exist right now, as well as the needs that are going to continue to be present. And when we fall behind, in having adequate funds for those needs, then our timelines also have to be adjusted. And when we're looking at how do we just keep up, but then also how do we go back and account for that permanent space where we need it, we know that time is of the essence. And we most likely are going to have projected enrollment increases. We don't know if it will continue at the rate that it has, but by all accounts, our enrollment projections still show growth. And that growth has to be accounted for in addition to the results of the growth that we've already experienced. So I just think it's a really complex issue that we face as a district, where we want to continue to keep our eye on the prize, which is great education for students. As we move forward with this, we're looking forward to providing informational sessions for our community, bringing the pieces that people need to have questions answered, and for us to also be looking in terms of future possibilities alongside of levies and bonds for other types of partnerships, other types of possibilities that we have, and we need to enlist the help of our community to do those things. So this is a school district for learning communities, one district for all kids, where we have to look at what's possible and how do we keep our district moving forward with facility needs, which then is what makes everything else work well for our students. So I appreciate the work that Barbara and John and others have done in trying to really be thoughtful about the information and what's part of this levy proposal, as well as thinking as a district, how do we continue to be as accurate as we possibly can be in looking at our enrollment projections, not just as a district, but also in specific neighborhoods and specific areas of our district. And we're looking at some new ways of maybe being even more precise, because it's a moving target all the time. It's amazing growth, but it's not stagnant growth. And so we want to keep looking at the nuances that are part of our communities. So all those things together are what's going to inform the work moving forward from this levy as we look at a bond in the distance, but we'll be here very, very quickly. And so we'll have a lot of work to do to decide what are some of those other solutions and how do we make sure we're as accurate and as thoughtful and as responsive as we need to be to continue to meet the needs of our entire school district.
Thank you. Director Stewart?
I think as any one of us drives along through any of the neighborhoods or the communities that we serve, it doesn't matter whether it's Kirkland, Sammamish, Redmond, doesn't matter which learning community, we're all seeing empty lots turning into condos, townhouses, apartment buildings. We're seeing larger, older lots no longer housing one house, but being subdivided into 2 or 4. Anyone who sees that and doesn't think that kids follow into those new homes, I just don't think that perhaps they want to fool themselves into thinking that we're a retirement community, but we're not. We do have a lot of folks that have lived here for a long time, but as we become a younger and younger community, I think we need to realize that we have increased enrollments hand over fist, to be quite frank. And for any of those that are doubting it, I'll show you all the new places that are starting to crop up in my neighborhood, because it's just hand over fist.
All right, well, Director Liberty, do you have anything? Okay. So first off, thanks so much, staff, for all the work in putting this together. We've spent a great deal of time talking about it and looking through options. We considered, what if we built a new elementary school in Kirkland that had been on prior, and actually in going through some of the information and the challenge of land in the setting that we are, additions seem to make much more reasonable approach in which to do this more effectively in such a short-term critical capacity needs. So there's been lots of discussion. I'm excited, actually, as you look at this. That's a short-term fix, and you have a longer, but it's those pieces in between in the next 3 years. That's probably where we have a lot of work as a board in the community to really come together and look through what are those other strategies, what are those other uncommon things we might want to tackle and try. The embedded classroom concept that we've seen in different places. I just had the opportunity to see some of it or hear about it in Port Angeles, which was fabulous, of the possibilities that we have out there. So that will be our challenge in the next 3 years. First will be this, to get that bridge into place. And then it'll be looking at how do we deal with those uncommon and really start to promote those down the ways and implement those within our community. So thank you again for all of it. This will be on the agenda on December 3rd. So if you do have any additional questions or concerns that come up, if you have something, please make sure to email those prior. There will be public comment at the meeting in December, so there will be possibility for the community to come and speak then, or they can feel free to email any one of us in between, and we can be able to follow up with that information at that time. So, anything else?
Also, please feel free to use the comment section. Let's Talk, thank you. Let's Talk on the website, because by virtue of that, we can be able to really track the comments. We can be able to track where the comments are coming from, so we can make sure that each community that is heard from, we know how to better answer your needs.
Thank you, Director Stewart. That's a good reminder of the addition we have of Let's Talk, that you can go in and put your question, comment, suggestion on anything, and somebody will get back to you. So it's a great opportunity. So moving on to our next thing, our superintendent report. We will just go on because we already received that from Dr. Staben. Thank you so much. Director La Liberty, do you have anything on the legislative side?
Not for today, I don't. Thank you.
All right, thanks so much. Is there any follow-up that has happened for the board? Any follow-up you want?
Sorry, I'm sure it will be part of the board briefs on the ASL situation. Yeah, growing pains, so thanks.
Any future agenda items? Okay. So we did have one piece on the board member comments. We did have the opportunity this past week to attend the WASDA State School Directors Annual Conference. It was requested by Director La Liberty that we take a moment of time in which to discuss some of the key points, lessons learned from the annual conference, to make sure that everybody's sort of aware, because I was there from Wednesday through Saturday. Others were there Thursday through Friday, Thursday through Saturday. So we did spend a great deal of time being able to learn about things around the state. So I will toss it out for Director Sage, Director Stewart, Dr. Staben, on which to comment.
There were a bunch of wonderful breakout sessions where, as school board directors, we could go and listen to what other school districts are doing and how they're doing it and how they're innovating, and lots of great ideas, different ways that student voice is being heard in different districts to increase the relevance and participation of our students. And I highly recommend those who could not make it should attend next time.
Dr. Staben?
I think I scared two of those students who were the board representatives, because I wanted to talk with them about their experience, and I assumed that's who they were, so I asked them a little bit more follow-up, and I know that's something that we've talked about in terms of adding more student voices in a variety of ways. I would like to everybody to know how much empathy I have for new students, because as a new person in our state, when you go to something that's a very familiar experience, but yet you don't know very many people there yet, it's very interesting in terms of kind of how you feel in that situation. But I've learned quickly many different people in different districts, and I think that's a lot of the value of attending a conference, is seeing what's there, like some revised strategic plans that we can look at as examples as we go about that process over the next few months, and how we need to think about what is most important and what is our biggest areas of focus moving forward, and then how we engage people in that work moving ahead. But it was a good experience to hear things at a state level for me, as I'm learning all about Washington and Washington education and things from the OSPI and different organizations that were present at the conference. So it was very helpful to me.
Director Stewart?
I think one of the things was very striking was the fact that the desire to try and fix some of the quote-unquote fixes from McCleary. There is will to fix perhaps the inequities of the special needs community that was really slighted, basically virtually no money coming out of McCleary. However, there's very little political will that I could see to do anything major. They feel they've really done their major work and their heavy lifting. Unfortunately, it may not have been all the heavy lifting that needs to be done. We all know that. But at least the one light in the tunnel was the fact that they are promising to come back and try and address the issues of SPED funding.
That's great. The other kind of the key takeaway, there was one, again, Port Angeles was a lot of fun, just looking at how they were able to take the maritime industry and the concepts behind it and the history of their town and sort of embed it throughout their curriculum in a very hands-on, place-based approach. And I think it's something to really think about as we look at those uncommon solutions. It was a very interesting process to be able to really engage your community and bringing them in. As I said, you want to bring your community in and bring your students out. So it was a great policy sort of concept of really looking at it. The other piece was OSPI's strategic plan is out. And so I had the opportunity to hear from that. And we are very much aligned in many of the things we're speaking to, but sort of one of the key ones. One is the dual language immersion. That is actually a focus within that strategic plan, and there's a variety of things. And so the more we can build our current dual language immersion and connect with those, I think is valuable. The idea of our world citizens and being able to have bicultural graduates, the stamp of biliteracy was definitely pressed. So as I think of our students' comments tonight on ASL 3, that lends itself well if in our ends results we speak to wanting to have the seal of biliteracy in doing so. We then need to make sure we provide the opportunities for our students to be able to succeed all the way through. So appreciate how that sort of all blends together from the strategic approach. So very valuable. Also student voice, the WASDA school board. I sit on the school directors board for the state. We were asked, why don't we have student representatives on our board? So we are now in the process probably of looking at what does that mean at the state level to be able to bring that forward. So there's a lot more desire for that student representation, and I think this is a good opportunity for us to really look at. So the idea will be that might be a future agenda item coming up over the next year in which to be able to look at what's our model here within Lake Washington. Anything else on that? Any other board member comments? All right, our next board meeting is planned to be held on December 3rd. We have a study session starting at 5. The board meeting will begin at 7. There will be public comment at that board meeting. There is also, just FYI, Mark will be attending the Federal Relations Network in Washington, D.C. That will be in January, and we'll be doing that, just so that that's the next piece coming up. Ledge Assembly will be coming up in February. So those are just some of the bigger items to be aware of what's going on. So thank you, Mark, for being willing to do the federal advocacy work and those components.
As long as I don't fall down the stairs again like I did last year and have to miss it.
Excellent. All right. So with that, I will now entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved by Director Carlson and seconded by Director Sage that we adjourn. All those in favor, please signify by voting aye.
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 All those opposed. With that, motion carries. Meeting is adjourned.